Welcome to Resourced and Resourceful Leadership, a podcast for people who care about the world and their impact in it. I'm Dr. Christine Pettit, and I'm so glad you're here with me. In fact, I really appreciate your presence, so thank you. This week's episode is a little bit like last week's. It's my blog of sorts, my podcast blog, though we learned last week that plogging is an actual thing where people pick up litter while walking or jogging. And I think that's pretty cool. I have some walking in my future. I'm going to be doing part of the Camino de Santiago with my Aunt Babs. And recently, Babs was listening to my podcast episode last week, and she left me a speak pipe, which I'm going to share with you now.
Good morning, Christine. I listened to your podcast while out on a walk, before a busy day at work, after a late night being at a community meeting, and I'm totally feeling the done is better than perfect. I support this, and not just because I'm your Auntie Babs and I would support what you do, but really, I think this is helpful for me in my work. Today, I'm going to meet with a bunch of employment coaches, and we're heading towards the end of our program year, and I want to see great outcomes. And I think those movements, micro or otherwise, once you do something that demands a little energy, there's an opportunity to get a little more energy. I appreciate you. Love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Babs. It's so special to me that you listen, that you engage, and of course, just all the ways that we're connected. And I cannot wait to be walking with you in Portugal in a few months. So, more on that to come for those of you who are listening and don't know what I'm talking about. But I wanted to give a little bit of an update from last week and then just talk about how, for me, being resourced and resourceful and looking at this through the lens of leadership means, in part, being in tune with my body, my thoughts, and my emotions, and giving all of those aspects of my self-care. So I'm going to share a little bit about that and encourage you to do your own reflecting as well. But before we get into that, last week we left off with me printing, and you could literally hear the printer in the background printing and then assembling materials for a workshop the following morning. A praise be to all that is good that I did not have any printing issues. I do not know what I was thinking, other than sometimes I really do push things to the limit, and that was one of them. I'm doing that a little bit tonight. It seems like it's just getting later and later when I record these podcasts, but yeah, it's actually later than I started last week, but that's because lots of reasons. I got a lot done this week in a more spacious way than I was describing last week, but definitely dynamic times over here. And tonight I was taking care of Ellie and putting her to bed and actually editing in the same place that I record and edit my podcast. I helped her because she recently did an interview with her grandparents on Renee's side, who immigrated in the 80s, one from Bolivia and the other from Mexico. And so I helped her edit that interview so she could share it with her class, because they're talking about immigration stories and what pushes people to come or pulls people to immigrate and just about their experiences. So it was cool to get to show her the software that I use and how I can edit with it. And she wanted me to include the music for this podcast at the beginning and end of her interview recording too. So that was cute. So anyway, we did that this evening before I put her to bed, and she was just slow to go to sleep tonight. So here I am recording a little bit late. That's okay though. I feel good, and even if it comes out a little bit after midnight, it's okay. In fact, I've been thinking about moving the time I publish it to a little later in the morning, just so it's like at the top of people's podcast stacks if you get a whole bunch of podcasts like I do. But I think it's fine either way. You'll find me if you want to listen, right? So that was fun, just helping her create that interview or put it together after Renee helped her interview his parents. And yeah, I was juggling a number of things. Like last week's Thursday morning was a bit precarious, but everything worked out, and I ended up in the parking lot of the organization that I was doing the workshop for just in time to join on my phone a training that I'm part of right now. It's in the internal family systems model. It's called the self-led coach. So it's really going deeper into internal family systems for me, deeper in a way that I learned about it in my coaching practice or in my coaching training, but really my teachers were bringing it as something more in depth than what the traditional coaching training gave, but not as in depth as like going through kind of a long process with it. It's been incredibly impactful and sufficient, I will say, in terms of what I know. And also there are parts of it that it is a therapeutic modality. It comes from therapy. And so there's, a line between coaching and therapy that's important to keep in mind when practicing. And so that said, the self-led coach, this workshop, it's really about learning, but through applying it to your own experiences as well. But at the same time, I've also been doing some practice with a friend and coach peer Edie, who went through a different, but I think similar training related to IF. So this week was our first time getting together to practice, and we did an activity where we were kind of mapping out different parts of ourselves that were coming up around a certain situation. And so I'll just speak for myself how that was for me. It was really interesting to think about a situation, and I'm not going to go into the details here, but I feel like somebody in my life, in my family life, I don't like the way that they treated me. And this happened a while ago. We're talking about almost 6 months ago. But it's been a pattern in my life and our interactions. And a lot of times there's kind of this moment where they get really mad and might cut me off or not. There's this moment where they get really mad and there's kind of like this friction there. And a lot of times I experience this as hurtful, the way that it's expressed. Hurtful, not in proportion to what happened, but also I feel like I'm missing part of the story that this person has about the incident that is making them so mad. And I'm not here saying I am blameless or that I couldn't show up better, but I was truly baffled by what happened. And in this most recent time, and my tendency is to kind of walk on eggshells around this person and then to put up a wall when something like this happens. And so I'm slowly examining what, if anything, I want to do differently and how, if any way, I want to approach the situation. What has happened in the past is there's this kind of blow up. I pull back. We're not really in touch. And then when we get together and there's rarely an acknowledgement of what happened. Occasionally there is. If I realize I did something insensitive or like where I could see why they were having the reaction that they're having, then I might apologize. I don't feel like the apology's ever really gone the other direction, but I might be forgetting a time or two. There have been times probably over a decade ago that there's been some acknowledgement and some ability to speak about these patterns, but yeah, it's hard, really hard. And I do tend to take it personally, even though I think there's more going on there. So, anyway, I'm trying to be sensitive while also sharing my reality. This is hard, it's hurtful, and it's kind of baffling to me. And there's definitely parts of me that feels like what's the big deal? I should be able to have the conversation. I should be able to address this better. I coach people on having difficult conversations. Why is this so hard? All of those things. So there's definitely a part that's just judging me for how hard it is. But it's one of those relationships that it feels really risky and hard to address it. And I think there are real risks there. So I'll just say that. Whew. Okay, so I thought about the situation in this exercise and then I mapped out what was coming up. And there's this kind of like peacekeeper part of me, there's the eggshell walker, and then I drew this kind of like water, but like nice clear water, no waves. So that's the part of me that wants to keep the peace, kind of dances around issues, tries to be really careful, tries not to make waves. So there's that part, and those are all kind of connected. Then there's these other things that come up. So I drew one as like the middle finger part, like F off. A brick wall that's kind of like this protective part that's like, don't come near me. you have hurt me and I don't want you anywhere close to me. And then there's this other part that's like, but I'm right. This doesn't make sense and I'm right. And so those all kind of go together. They're distinct in some ways, but they're more of the like, the emotion there is more like anger and like guardedness, like shut. I mean, there's a little guardedness too in the peacekeeping, eggshell walking, of course. But one has more of a sad, scared energy behind it, even though it's like coming off as calm. And the other has this real, like, I'm gonna tell you off. The way I described it was like, you stepped on my foot and, like, get off my foot. You know, like, this hurts, get off me, get away from me. And just this angry part. And this peacekeeper, this peacekeeping part, I really think what is underneath there is it's protecting what I've talked about as this part of me that's afraid of being thrown away. Like, don't throw me away. This part that's afraid that I'm disposable and like even disposable in my family. And the sadness is coming up just thinking about it right now. But I've felt that because I've experienced it, and not in this particular situation or even this like part of my family, but you know, and I'm sure there's some like deeper roots there too around abandonment and whatnot, but I don't even really feel like I need to go there. Like, I have examples when my step grandma died, but my grandma, she was my grandma Betty, and she was my grandma since I was young. And I had a relationship with her throughout my adult life until she died. But because I wasn't connected to her son and even some of the cousins in my family, I mean, I particularly like made a point to even be in contact with one of my cousins, and no one told me she died. Like, I was not notified she died until I went to go visit where she lived, and they told me. And so, you know, there's that part of like feeling like being left out and disposable, and yeah. So there's that, and there's like a dynamic even in my family of it's my dad and my stepmom, and we have my stepmom and I have a good relationship now, and all my sisters are half sisters, but we were all raised together. I consider them, and I think we all consider each other sisters. But yeah, there's a fear part of like things can go sideways and death, and I think there's just stuff around that where stuff around my family is tender. And it's the emotional part of it too. I could see, you know, me mentioning death. It's like the stuff. Yeah, the thing with my grandma, there was no stuff. There was nothing to inherit. But just not to have that connection and to be closed off in that way, it was really hurtful. And so that more than anything is, I think, this tender part of me that gets activated with family pieces is just like, hey, I want to be part of the family. And like, yeah, I think unpacking a little bit more like what family means and expectations around family, because I feel like I tend to be the one who's like trying to get us all together and working hard in these ways that aren't always reciprocated and maybe not wanted or welcome, and people can have good reasons for that, and that's okay. Like, I respect that. I think I'm just trying to, like, be honest with myself about what is there and what's not. And so, anyway, this is a situation that I'm looking more at. And as you can hear, there's a lot going on there. And the other thing that I did when I was looking at this is connect it back to the 8 C's of self leadership, which I've talked through them in previous episodes. But, this part of me that really is afraid of being thrown away, well, the beautiful side of it is that it wants connection. So that's one of the C's. Connection is something that I want. And there's also the angry part of me that wants to burn it all down. That part wants me to be courageous too, and to speak up for myself. And so, that's what I'm sitting with right now, is those values. I think I want those to drive my response: connection and courage. So anyway, just a little light self-examination this week. And this week has been more spacious in the sense that I'm not, I didn't have an interview and then 2 workshops or sessions that I was leading. The other session that I did last week, in addition to a staff day for an organization where we were looking at work and communication styles and productive conflict, the other session that I did on Friday was wrapping up a strategic planning process for Rancho Los Alamitos, where I was the interim executive director. And then I've been doing their strategic plan. And that's been just a wonderful process. So I'm so grateful for all of my experience there, including the water main break, even though it would have been better if that had never happened. But that was presenting it to the staff and volunteers and anyone who wanted to come, basically, to learn about how I had taken all of their input and all of the community input we got into it to shape the strategic plan and what that will look like with implementation. And I did that alongside the executive director, so he could really share like where they're going to take things from here. So that was exciting. Just a lot, like, good stuff, good opportunities. And then I was really relieved to just have a few clients on the schedule this week. And so I jumped right into some life admin stuff, doctor's appointments, doing some stuff for Ellie, who's having some teeth removed, and that's, not so exciting, but got into the doctor, helped her get some stuff scheduled. And then what is more exciting is finally sat down and planned our summer trip. We're going to go to France as a family, and then I'm going to meet my Aunt Babs in Portugal to walk part of the Camino with her. She has walked the Camino de Santiago. This will be her 3rd time. And each time she's gone, I've wanted to go with her, but the timing has never been good for me to do that. And this time, it'll be a little, it's never easy to get away for a week, but I was like, this timing makes the most sense that it ever has, and I don't really want to wait to try to do it another time, even though it would be great. We talked about doing it with Ellie when she's a teenager. I would love that, but this just feels like a good time. So my family will head back to the States, and then I'm going to stay on in Portugal fly over to Portugal and meet her and walk with her for a few days. So really excited about that. That's more the end of the summer. But I'm glad that I was able to like just sit down and finally book everything because it's May, like literally May. And so summer is right around the corner and things fill up and get busy. I am really happy that we were able to use hotel or like credit card points and convert them to reserve hotel rooms. So I think 7 of the 10 nights that we're staying at hotels with credit card points, so for free. So I'm really excited about that too. Helps to offset the cost of flying a little bit. And then today I was learning about how to earn airline miles on ordinary things that we shop for. And so I was like, I think I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to that too. Because I like to travel and traveling adds up. So free is a very good price when it's stuff, doing things, earning things on money that you would spend anyway. Anyway, I also had a coaching session this week, and I've talked about how one of the things that I want to explore is doing either groups or courses, and that's something I really want to do this year. And I'm aware that we're almost at the midpoint of the year, and what I think has been really great about doing this podcast is it is doing what I wanted it to do. It's helping me just create space to reflect, also to be in conversation with other people. One of my friends reached out about a potential group that he would like to see happen. And I was like, actually, I think I would like to facilitate that or something like it. And I was also already percolating on an idea for a group or a course related to leadership, and how that one I was thinking about for women. And I don't know, there's some crossover with the group that he proposed to me too, though. But looking at some of the things that I come back to over and over when I'm helping people in their leadership is developing your own barometer of success, getting support, and connecting with peers, which does connect to getting support as well. But like just maybe a group experience, coaching, or like some practices around that in a course. So anyway, I love that ideas are percolating, and then there was this feeling of like, ugh, but when am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? And I decided, working with my coach, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do like my own kind of mini retreat in early July. I think I'm just going to do it here. I'm not going to like go somewhere else. Just during the days when Ellie's at summer camp 1 week. And I'm kind of like mapping out what I want to do. There might also be like a trip to the Korean spa or like the nature center here, something like that during this week. But really, I want to do one day of kind of listening back to the podcast and getting ideas from there. I think putting ideas up on butcher paper or whatever. Yeah, just kind of some time to think through where I want to go and make some plans around that. But just knowing that I'm not doing it in May or June because this is called Mayvember for those of us parents juggling all the things. And I recently saw it referred to as mayhem as well, which I thought was appropriate. And then the middle of June. School is out. So, yeah, just kind of figuring out the beginning of July seemed like the first really good week where I could block some time off and give myself space to create and ideate and reflect and all that good stuff. So I'm excited for that. If you have any ideas for me about things you would love it if I shared more about or offered in the form of group or course content or something else, if you have ideas for me, please let me know. I'd love it. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, being resourced and resourceful means being in tune with my body, my thoughts, my emotions, and giving all those aspects of my self care. And some of that I already shared with you, how I kind of explore the different parts that are coming up for me and in my body. And a lot of times when I do parts work, it's like identifying where that is in or around your body. I didn't really do that in this mapping activity, but today I was part of in the everyday artist session tea that I talk about sometimes because it's on Wednesdays before I record the podcast, or a lot of times I'm doing work in there. But the other thing is, like, I missed a lot of tea sessions the last 2 months because of scheduling, and so I haven't been doing the work of the podcast during those sessions, and so that's why I'm recording so late as well. Anyway, I went off track, but part of what we do in the session is some tapping around whatever is kind of like coming up to help build that creative energy. And today we explored some feelings of like anxiety around creating or fear, even, yeah, things that kind of come up. And for me, it wasn't necessarily, well, yeah, I think there is some fear around creating, actually. There definitely are some things, but it was helpful to explore what was coming up for me. And like, there were the doubts about being able to do what I want to do. And even like this feeling of, when I think about my kind of creative life and my business, sometimes there's fears that come up, like I'm not going to be successful the way that I would like to be, that I'm already behind, I'm not going to save enough for retirement. Yeah, there was just things that were coming up there when I was exploring my anxiety a little bit more. And it was nice to just sit. I didn't do all of the tapping. Sometimes I find that to be like more irritating for me, and I just want to sit and breathe. Sometimes I do it the whole time and it's helpful, but today just giving myself some space to breathe and acknowledge the self-doubt that was coming up, and yeah, the feeling self-doubt, and there was something else there. But going back to those C's of self-leadership, the C's that came up in that moment for me were calm and confidence. And so it's okay that I have these doubts and questions, and it's human. But that's not where I want to make decisions from. That's not where I want to move from. Where I want to move from is calm and confidence. And so giving myself some care to recognize what was going on for me and then to recenter was helpful. So I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that I in listening, like, I know what I experience. Not that you experience it the same way, but I know us humans, we can deal with doubts and fears and anxieties and sometimes wanting to give people the middle finger or wanting to put up a brick wall or, needing to walk on eggshells, feeling that we need to, or keep the peace. We can move from these fearful or angry or sad or scared places, but it's not really what we want to be driving the car, as the metaphor goes. And so, yeah, I hope that it kind of normalizes that, but also that you get some tools and that you can apply it in your own way. So, as I wrap up this episode, I encourage you to reflect on what you're taking away from listening. What resonated with you or didn't? What does that tell you about your own experience? How are you feeling in your body, in your mind? What thoughts are taking up the most space right now? What care can you offer to yourself right now? What care might you want to offer to yourself later? And when will you do it? If you want to hear more of the Resourced and Resourceful Leadership podcast, please follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. To support the show, please leave a 5-star review and share the show with a few people who you think would appreciate it. And please check out the link to SpeakPipe in the show notes. I'd love it if you left me a message about what stood out to you from this show or topics you'd like me to cover in the future episodes. Thanks again and take good care. And really, I don't think I said, well, I did say it a few times, but thank you for listening. And I really appreciate you being on this journey with me. Bye.